Hello from the Writer's Dungeon. I'm reading to you today from Rebel Without a Clue, Book 1. It's halfway through about, you can see, Chapter 15. Pete has been befriended by Woody. Pete has two landings. The first time he arrives in Dunoon on a scaffolding in the middle of an 80s street party, and he impresses everyone with his splits and back flaps because he's really flexible on account of being made of Teflon, which is also why he ends up in the wrong place. I mean, Pete's Teflon really mucks up the coordinates. It's something to do with it being all squidgy on Earth, and it really throws the operators. It's the operators who have teleported him there. They do it in a shed, the teleporting that is, and when they realise they've made a mistake, they shunt him across to Edinburgh, where he lands in a disabled toilet in a cafe. He bumps his head and everything, and it still isn't right, but the operators figure it's Edinburgh, and well, they see Woody and lose all power of reason. Dwarfs are a sex god on planet Hyman. See, Woody's an unemployed dwarf who wants to be a sci-fi writer, and he's sent in to help because the toilet's window is only small, and Pete's crashed against the door, and no one can get in. So Woody and Pete become friends. They sit at the table in the cafe, and Pete, because he's on Earth, can eat and goes mental for flapjacks and coffee and sugar and fat, cappuccinos and cake and biscuits and shortbread and heaps of tablet. So the next day he wakes up with a sugar stroke caffeine hangover, and he realises that not only is he a long way from home, but he's alone. So here we go. Well, he's not really alone, he's with Woody. But he doesn't know it yet that they're going to be great friends. Woody was pressing buttons on his phone with a confused look, convinced that he had charged his phone up that morning. Pete stared ahead with a face like a jilted bride. He was trying to adjust to the crashing down of caffeine and sugar by contemplating his navel, a useless practice, as robots have no navel. "My phone's died," said Woody. "I'm alone," muttered Pete. "My mum will kill me." "Completely and utterly alone." "Better than facing my mum an hour late," said Woody. "Destitute," said Pete. He looked out the window. He stood out like a turtle on a table, like a pickled egg on a flapjack. He turned his empty cup in his hand. "Stuck here, eating cake until I die." Woody looked at Pete's long face. "I can't go out there like this," said Pete. Woody slid his phone into his pocket with a sigh. "Let's get you to Primark." Pete and Woody headed to Primark. The street was packed with people shoving and pushing, and as Pete and Woody tripped their way through the cobble streets, they often had to stop. Woody even went missing and came back with a "There you are." Pete, being a robot of action, waited in his incognito pose, as recommended by the robot manual, until he noticed the silver statue performer a few feet away doing what looked like an admirable take on an old-style incognito pose. "I can do that," thought Pete. And before he knew it, he had piles of coins at his feet. Several "come to see my show" leaflets in his hand, and the silver statue performer waving all sorts of finger signs at him, which Pete assumed was a form of comradeship. Pete and Woody looked like performers in the Edinburgh Festival. Pete, covered in gold, with a face that looked torn from plastic surgery. Earth's smoggy atmosphere had that effect on Teflon. And Woody, a dwarf, with dreadlocks and a fondness for camouflage trousers, piercings and tattoos, looking like a psychic that probably did something with fires or told stories. And as they pushed their way through the crowds, many stopped and stared. Some even asked where their show was. Pete passed many incognito poses, some of higher standards than others. He also saw lots of performers, singers, magicians of all shapes and sizes, some men, even some on their own. In fact, the abundance of men was almost overwhelming. He even passed a large see-through box with what he assumed was a robot with impressive, flexible, folding up inside, with a man standing by the box collecting money. "But she's here every year," said Woody, "with a different man. Always makes a packet." Pete stared at the contortionist with her slim legs wrapped around her ears. "I can do that," he thought, as Woody dragged him on. Pete's mood lightened. He felt inspired. There was a lot more to this earth than he'd been led to believe. For a start, no one even mentioned robots. Well, I guess you'll never look at a disabled toilet again, or a flapjack. Well, until next time, happy reading.